Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Gentlemen, and if there are any ladies on the call, we're about to get started here. I already understand there is some issue going on with certain people trying to log in and being told that the call is full. I don't have an answer at the moment. I doubly don't have an answer because as people are sending me those messages, other people have been joining in. So Google is working on the problem. As I just sent out in an email, at worst, there is a recording of this webinar that will be available shortly after we complete our talk tonight. And those who, for whatever reason, were having technical issues can view the webinar online at their convenience, and I'll be happy to answer any questions directly for those people who had trouble logging in. First things first, I just want to make sure everybody is hearing me okay. If somebody can please step up to the plate, type into the chat box that you're hearing me loud and clear, and we'll proceed from there. Beautiful. Thank you, guys. All right. So the first thing I want to do is to get to know everybody. A lot of you, or some of you at least, I've got to know over the past year, did this webinar with you or a certain version of it, and worked with you either in the first half or second half of the season, or some of you both. I hope it was a help. I'm always up for tips for improvement from my end because I'm here to serve you guys. So don't hesitate. If you feel like I'm not being clear on something tonight, if you want to dig a little bit deeper, whatever it is, I want you to come away with some knowledge tonight. I want you to come away with insight. I want you to come away feeling like you invested your time well. So please don't be shy. This is what you guys do for a living. You're not shy by design. Let me know. If I can be clear, if I can go more in depth on something, I'll be happy to stop what I'm doing and make sure that you guys understand fully. That's what we're here for. Secondly, let's introduce each other. Some returners, some rookies. We'll go one by one. If you can just unmute your microphone as I call your name. Just tell me your name, who you're working for, and maybe about 30 seconds about your background, where you went to school, who have you broadcast for, and so on. We'll start with, I'm sorry, I can't remember who this is personally, Booyah Radio. Who's Booyah Radio? Booyah Radio, can you unmute your microphone? Okay, we'll come back to you. Jordan Hall. Jordan, can you unmute your microphone?
Hi, this is Jordan, working for the Traverse City Pit Spitters. This is my first year doing broadcasting for any team. My background is, let's see, I went to school for broadcasting at Bethel College in Mishawaka, Indiana. My more professional broadcasting experience is I host the Podcastianos. It's a Detroit Tigers podcast. Weekly on iTunes, Spotify, etc. That's probably my biggest broadcasting experience so far, and this will be my first season.
Beautiful. Welcome to the league, Jordan. Lucas.
Thank you.
Lucas, are you there? All right, Lucas, if you want to unmute yourself at some point during the chat here, let us know. How about Connor? Are you there, Connor? Everybody left to get a sandwich. How about Benjamin? Benjamin, I see you unmuted. Is your microphone working?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
All right, hi, everyone. My name is Ben Curtis. This is my first year that's going to be working in the Northwoods League. I'm a freshman, or just finished up my freshman year at the University of Maryland, where I'm a journalism major. There, I do some work with our student radio station, the Maryland Baseball Network, and the Big Ten Network as well. I'm originally from Boca Raton, Florida, and I'm really excited to get going here. And I'm with the Battle Creek Bombers, if I didn't already mention that.
My old stomping grounds, Battle Creek. Welcome to the league, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Andrew Murphy. Andrew, go ahead. Andrew, we have your mic, but we can't hear you. All right, we'll circle back if we have a chance. James Stanley.
Hi, can you hear me?
We got you loud and clear, partner.
Great. My name is James Stanley. I'm a senior at the University of Missouri. I'll be doing a victory lap next fall. I've done so much play-by-play work that it's actually hurt my grades. So I guess with Mizzou not having enough classes for play-by-play, they mostly focus on print and writing. What I've done is I've reached out to 3 different colleges that are around mid-Missouri. One is Westminster College. They're D2 or they're D3. One is William Woods University. They are NAI, and then the third one is Lincoln University out of Jefferson City, Missouri. They're D2, and I do all their play-by-play and stuff. Most for Lincoln, it's on the radio. Then for Westminster and William Woods, it's all on live stream. And I also work for Mizzou student radio station as well. So yeah, that's about it. It's my first year in the league, and I'm with the Kenosha Kingfish.
Beautiful. Welcome, welcome. Guys, by the way, I got news for you. Unless you're trying to get into grad school or unless you're on probation for some reason, grades don't matter all that much. So if you're shooting for 4.0 and you want the award, go for it. Absolutely. And if you're trying to get into grad school, grades matter. But at the end of the day, if you're getting your bachelor's degree or associate's degree, and that's going to be it for you, doesn't make a whole lot of difference between a 3.2 and a 2.9. So if you need to make a little sacrifice in exchange for getting on-air time, which is what you want to do for a living, I highly suggest, though your parents might disapprove of what I'm saying, take the time, get the experience on air, because that is what's going to separate you from your competitors applying for these professional jobs. Nobody looks at GPA for a baseball announcer. Nobody cares. We care about your baseball IQ, care about your ability on air, and not whether you got a B or a C in accounting. So helpful hint. Again, grad school, different. Probation, different. But in the bigger picture, get the experience at the expense of, 0.2 of a grade point average. Welcome. How about Scott Perkins?
What's going on, guys? I actually go by Steven. I don't know why my Google name says Scott, but I'm at I'm at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. I'm the sports director for that student radio station. I primarily focus on hockey, but I do baseball as well. And I'll be with Battle Creek Bombers this year.
Welcome, Steve. Appreciate it. Pete Knutson, you back?
I'm back. Hello.
Welcome back.
Yeah, Pete Knutson, Eau Claire Express. This will be my 6th season. Yes, I'm old. Yes, I started broadcasting at the University of Kansas on the student radio station there. Now I'm the sports director at iHeartRadio here in Eau Claire. So call for UW Stout, D3 school here for football, basketball, and anything they want me to call for. And high school sports and pretty much everything. So I've had a nice little off season here for the last 2 months. So ready to get back up for the grind of the Northwoods League. So excited to be here.
Beautiful. Welcome back. Who else is with us here? Reed.
Yeah, hi there. Reed Conant, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, Reed Conant with Bismarck Larks this summer. First summer in the Northwoods League. I go to school at Azusa Pacific out in California. I'm the voice of the Cougars out there for baseball mostly, but other sports too, for the last 2 years. And yeah, that's been my main broadcasting experience. I've done some podcasting and other things too, and on the writing side as well. But mostly just the voice of the Cougars down in near LA, East LA.
Beautiful. Welcome. And Rick Johnston.
Hey guys, you got me?
We got you.
Perfect. I'm with the Kokomo Jackrabbits. I'm like Pete. I'm an old guy. I just finished my 6th season, finishing up here at Taylor University, which is in the same conference as Jordan. Graduated from Ball State in 2010, and my first broadcasting job was out at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point.
All right. We appreciate it. As more people file in here or get their microphones working, feel free to just join in at a given break in the presentation. Let us know you're here and what you're about, and we'll be happy to hear from you. Guys, these are the folks you're working with throughout the year. These are your colleagues. Make sure you treat them well. Make sure you treat everybody with respect. Do whatever you can to help, whether it's with information, as long as it doesn't put you a competitive disadvantage, whether it's helping out with a phone line in the press box, internet access, letting the guys know where they can get food, letting them know the nearest route to the bathroom, or just saying hello and knowing that they have a friendly person in the press box. It really, really makes a difference. And, these are just like in college. These are some lifelong friendships that you're going to make. I still keep in touch with a lot of the guys from my Northwoods League days and from my other professional days from 10, 15 years ago. And it's a tight-knit community for you guys doing this professionally for the first time. There aren't that many people, relatively speaking, that get to do this for a living, based on the competitiveness of the industry. So you're in a small club. You're starting out, but you're in a small club. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of the good people within the industry. If you guys have anything you want to say again during the presentation, feel free to open your microphone or type it in the chat box. I won't automatically see it in the chat box, but when I circle back around, I'll take a look and answer any questions you may have. Does anybody have anything before we get started here? All right. So we're going to go to the presentation here. Give me just a moment to pull it up. All right. So welcome. That was pretty simple. We already went through our welcome. We already did our roll call. We're way ahead. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mike Wagenheim. I spent 12 years in the Division I ranks as a broadcaster in a number of sports. Was with the University of New Orleans and Nicholls State University down in Louisiana. Was also the voice of the Division I Sun Belt Conference, handling their championship events for a number of different sports. I did play-by-play for the Mountaineer Sports Network at West Virginia University. Spent 3 years in minor league baseball in the Tampa Bay and Seattle organizations, and was 5 years as a host and executive producer of weekly television program on regional TV. This is year number 4 for me as a sports broadcast instructor. I was also an internship supervisor in my previous life, and I'm currently a political correspondent on an international TV network. Politics and sports have a lot in common. It's very competitive. It's very dirty. People will do just about anything to win. So it's been interesting going from sports to politics, but in some ways it's very much alike. Life as a Northwoods League broadcaster. For those of you returning, you know about this. For you new guys, this is really going to test whether you're able to do this professionally, whether you want to do it professionally, but whether you're able to as well. Doing 1 game a week, 2 games a week, doing a weekend series, and then having off until the next weekend, that's one thing. Doing, 70 games, 72 games now? I didn't look at the schedule this year. In about 76, 78 days is grueling. It is a grind. And to be able to come up with the enthusiasm every night, especially with the long bus rides that are involved, to be able to come up with fresh material, prep, stories, information, to be able to make it interesting when the team's on a 6-7 game losing streak. These are the marks of a professional. These are the marks of somebody who knows what they're doing. These are the marks of people that can hang around in the business for a long time. You think of even some of the major league teams that struggle year after year after year, and yet their announcers seem to stick around. There's a reason for that. It's not because somebody else isn't good enough to do it. It's because they find a way through it all to just make it interesting for the listener, for the viewer. It's the ultimate skill that you can have. Anybody can call a championship as long as you don't just scream on the air like a Yahoo. Anybody can call a home run. Anybody can call an exciting moment. How do you make a 10-1 loss sound interesting? How do you get yourself up for a 1 p.m. start when you just got off the bus at 8 a.m.? How do you do this? This is the test of a professional. This is really the test of being a Northwoods League broadcaster, but it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. You're really going to be challenged to keep your broadcasts sounding fresh game after game after game. This is where you're going to get the experience better than any other summer league out there. This is what separates the Northwoods League, and this is why it's such a fantastic opportunity for you. It's going to tax you physically. I know most of you guys few of you said you're old. You're really not. I'm old. But you young guys, even if you're young, it's going to tax you physically. You're not out there playing every day, but you're traveling and you're staying in hotels and unfamiliar settings. Maybe your roommate's going to snore and keep you up all night. I'm serious. You may laugh, but it's grueling physically to have to go through this. You wake up some mornings, you're not going to know where you are, especially if you haven't done this full time before. Take care of yourselves. Eat right. As much as the ballpark food may not allow you to do that, try to eat right. Try to get some exercise, even if it's just walking around the hotel, during an afternoon that might be a little bit lazy. Take care of yourselves. It's incredibly important, and it will help you get through the year. And as I mentioned, it's going to be one of the most impactful experiences of your life, not just as a broadcaster, but really just, as somebody developing as a person. All the different people you're going to meet, all the experiences you're going to have, all the stories you're going to have. It really is a tremendous opportunity for you to take something away from. What you're going to need: good suitcase. Don't be skimpy on the suitcase. It's going to take some hard knocks on the bus. It's going to take some hard knocks going up the steps in the stadium when there's no elevator, which is most stadiums. Get a decent suitcase and get a decent laptop as well. You don't want to get stuck with anything too slow. You're going to be counting on your laptop throughout the season. It doesn't need to be the most expensive thing in the world, but make sure it's not something that's ready to break down. If you find yourself in the midst of a 6-game road trip and your laptop conks out, it's not a good feeling, and you can't get anything done, and you're going to be lost on your broadcast. So make sure you got a decent piece of equipment with you. You need, especially for your younger guys, and it's tough, the ability to receive criticism. A lot of guys that are in this league for the first time have heard nothing but good things so far about their broadcast work, and probably it's been validated by getting this job in the Northwoods League. It shows that you're capable. It shows that you're being put in a prime position, especially if you're fairly new to the industry. You got to be able to deal with criticism. It's going to come from your general manager. It's going to come from your listeners. It's going to come. You got to learn to shed the ego. You got to learn to receive it constructively, not just you suck or you're biased, but hey, that you're not sounding exciting enough, or hey, it sounds like you're a little bit behind the play, or hey, I'm not getting enough information. You got to be able to take that stuff in stride and deal with it, not only on a person-to-person level and say thank you for the feedback, but to be able to think about whether it's true or not and how you can start to rectify it. Incredibly important, or else there's no way to get better. Experience will always make you better, but experience continuing to do the wrong things game after game, it only makes you more experienced in doing the wrong thing. We got to do the right things, and the only way to, if you know whether you're doing the right things or not, is to listen to the people that are listening to you. Incredibly important. Make sure you're grateful for the opportunity, guys. And I know this is tougher. This is more difficult done than said sometimes, especially when there'll be days when you're just not having fun. There'll be days when your team's been getting its behind kicked game after game after game. And there's going to be days when you're just dealing with personal stuff that has nothing to do with baseball that is just going to bring you down, whether it's girlfriend issues, whether it's you're trying to get into a particular school or a particular whatever it is. We all have personal problems. Just remind yourself, again, that you're in a very unique situation, and try to take advantage of it as much as possible. Try to keep as much as possible a positive attitude, even if it's for only 3 hours a game or 3 hours a day in the time you're on the air. If you want to go back to the hotel room and sulk a little bit, fine. Be a human being. But on the air, it's something different. The listener or the viewer, and it sounds cold, doesn't care if your girlfriend just broke up with you. The viewer, the listener, doesn't care that whatever it is. They don't care. They want to be entertained. They want to tune in and get a decent broadcast. That's what they're there for. So you got to give them your best for those few hours a day and put the rest of the stuff aside. You got to make sure you want to get better. Lose any ego, lose any kind of attitude you have very quickly. The desire to improve with each broadcast is going to make this season worthwhile. You should sound much, much different from game 1 to game 72 or whatever it is this year. You shouldn't, and even if you're back for your 4th, 5th, or 6th year, game 1 of this year should not sound the same as game 72. Game 72, you should sound like a much improved broadcaster. This is the way it works. It's been said by more than one person who's been in the business for a long time that in baseball, you need about 1,000 games to really find your stride as a broadcaster. 1,000 games. It's an eternity, especially doing, 100 a year if you're doing the Northwoods League and some college games. That's a long time, but it's not that far-fetched. That's what it takes. And you got to improve each and every time out. There's no taking games off. It just doesn't work at this level, because if you're taking a game off, the competitor for the next job, he's not taking the game off, and he's going to get that next job. That's just the way the business works. If you want to survive long term, that's what it takes. I'm going to get out of this for just a second and see if we have any questions so far. Give me just a moment. Any questions so far? Anybody want to chime in either by microphone or by a chat box? I'll give it a few seconds. All right, guys, don't be afraid. All right, we'll continue with the presentation here. Let me pull it back up. Oh, let me go back a little bit. Okay, here are some things you won't need. Something from your demo reel every game. Too many guys, especially at this level, get caught up in having highlight reels, get caught up in a call that they think should be on SportsCenter every night. That's not how it works. You can't manufacture moments. You can't go nuts on a play that doesn't deserve it. You're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing your listeners a disservice, and it takes you out of the flow when all you're thinking about is what should go on a highlight reel rather than trying to be true to what's going on in the game. It's distracting. It's distracting for the listener. It's distracting for you. Over the course of a Northwoods League season, you're going to have plenty of stuff on your demo reel. That's part of the purpose of working a long season. Don't try to manufacture anything. It's fake, and people will sense it's fake. And if I'm or another decision maker about a job is listening to it, they're going to sense that it's fake. Don't do it, and don't worry about it. Just get it out of your mind early. The highlight reels, the highlight calls will come naturally. Don't try to manufacture anything. A reminder, especially for your new people, if you go to Thunder Bay, don't make phone calls from Thunder Bay unless you have a long-distance plan. I keep hearing every year of guys that go north of the border, they make phone calls back to the United States, they turn around the next month, and they are stuck with a bill that is astronomical and probably just as much as they were making that month for broadcasting baseball. Be very careful when you get around the border, even close to the border, that you're not making phone calls from around that area, and especially once you cross the border. Use Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, whatever kind of instant messenger you have. There are lots of audio calling apps now that don't require phone service, that just go over the internet. Use them. Don't make phone calls from Canada or anywhere near it. You will pay the price, literally. Again, this is part of keeping your ego in check, guys. Make sure that you're treating all the people around you well. Be a decent human being. It has nothing to do with broadcasting, but it's a reflection of the organization that you work for. The bus driver, the hotel staff, the restaurant servers. They might be having a bad day. The bus driver might have gotten lost for the 5th time on the road trip. You're not getting your food in time. Now you're going to have to choke it down. Whatever it is, it stinks. It's life. Please make sure, as a representative of your organization, you're treating everybody well. They take note. It gets back to your boss one way or another. I've seen it a million times in my career, where the athletic director, if you're working for a college, or the general manager, if you're working in the Northwoods League, will get a very nice note from some random person that said that, oh, the Honkers were in Iowa this past week staying at our hotel, and wow, they were well-behaved young gentlemen. They pay attention to those things, random people, but it gets back. Just make sure Just be a decent human being to everybody. It never hurts. Some tips about being a professional. Don't take yourself seriously, but take what you do seriously. This is a business. We're all trying to get ahead. We all need to take what we do seriously, our preparation, our on-air presentation, the way we handle ourselves when we're walking around the stadium. That stuff needs to be taken seriously. When you start taking yourself too seriously, you start developing, a little bit of an insular bubble. Becomes problematic in a lot of different ways. So make sure, even as you're trying to get better, even as you're trying to progress, even as you're trying to present yourself as a professional, be likable, be personable. Just again, be human. I learned this lesson very, very early in my broadcast career, which almost didn't come to fruition because I was quite immature at the time and I was doing some things off air that I probably shouldn't have been doing. And my general manager in college straightened me out very quickly. And he gave me this piece of advice. And this is when, showing you my age, this is when Bob Costas was always on the lead broadcast for everything, the Olympics, NBA Finals, Super Bowl, everything. He said, when Bob Costas walks down the street in New York and he buys a hot dog, he's Bob Costas. Meaning it doesn't matter what you're doing. Doesn't matter if you have your team gear on. It doesn't matter if you're working as a professional or you're off duty. It doesn't matter. You're you. You're always on duty in one way or another. Doesn't mean you need to be working, but you always need to carry yourself professionally. People are watching. People in the community that you work in are watching. Always. There's always somebody who knows you from somewhere. They've seen you on the webcast. They know you from some community relations event you went to. Doesn't mean you need to be paranoid, but just know, carry yourself with dignity. Carry yourself in a way that you're not embarrassing yourself. Again, those are the things that separates the professionals from the amateurs. Don't get yourself in the newspaper for the wrong reason. It is a career killer these days. One Google search can end your career if you're not careful. It stinks. It stinks that we can work so hard at something and be good at something and have one mistake just kind of eliminate us from contention for any number of jobs. That's the reality. And you need to be thinking about it when you're off the air, walking down the street to buy a hot dog. Too many people have seen their career shot that way. Professional prepares vigorously. You should have way more information for every broadcast than you can ever think of using. If you ever find yourself shorthanded on the air for information, it means you've done an awful job preparing that day, and you need to do 10 times as much the next day. I'm talking about having updated rosters, updated information on the players, their full biographies, full stats, knowing the trends, looking on the local website of the team you're playing and seeing what's going on, what type of information is available from the local paper there. I mean, any piece of information you can get, talking to the other broadcaster as well, trying to extract information from them. You have to prepare vigorously. If you don't use all the information, it doesn't mean you've wasted your time. It means you're being a professional. Don't pull back if you suddenly say, oh, I'm wasting all this information. I'm not using half of this stuff, so I'll do less next game. No, keep it up. Eventually, it's going to come in handy. Eventually, when it's a 4-hour game, you're going to use that stuff. And if nothing else, when you go on air and you feel prepared, it helps relax you. It helps get you into the rhythm a lot quicker. It's like going for an exam. If you go to an exam you didn't study for, you know the feeling. You're jittery when you get in there. And you really can't focus, and you're wondering how you're going to make it through it because you didn't study, you didn't prepare. It's no different for a broadcast. And especially in this league, when you have so many broadcasts to prepare for, you need to make sure you're doing it every day. You're going to want to take days off. You can't. You've got to prepare every day. And again, get your work evaluated all the time. Find somebody in this business beside me, but I'm going to evaluate your work. But find somebody else that you trust in this business to evaluate your work. Send it even your general manager might not know anything about radio or television, but they know what a good baseball broadcast is at least supposed to sound like. They may not be able to tell you you need to improve on this and this, but they can at least tell you, yeah, I'm happy with this or I'm not happy with this. Find people that you trust. It's the only way you're going to get better. You've got to get constant feedback. Dealing with players and the media. We all do dumb things. Doesn't matter if you've been in this league for a day, if you've been in this league for 6 years, if you've been in Major League Baseball for 40 years, you probably do dumb things. This is just being a human being. So keep in mind, all the players in the Northwoods League are student athletes. They're somewhere between, there's a few 16-year-olds, generally between 17 and 21 years old. They're going to do dumb things. Give them a break. Give them a break. Don't knock them on the air. Don't think that you somehow would have done something differently. Keep that in mind. You probably do dumb things. Student athletes are going to do dumb things as well. Try not to be too judgmental on the air. If you knew more than the manager, you'd be in the dugout. You wouldn't be on the radio. Keep that in mind as well. Managers are going to make confusing moves sometimes. That just, what is he doing? Why? I don't understand that. Keep those thoughts to yourself. You can say, well, that's an interesting move. Or he also had Jim available tonight, but he's going with Sam. You can make it known that he had other options without making it sound like you're second guessing him. And believe me, it will get back to the manager that you're second guessing him on the air. And it's going to create a problem. And there's no reason for it. You don't have to agree with what's going on. You can voice that there are other options. Don't try to second guess the managerial decisions on the air. A lot of times, you just don't know what's going on. You don't know that somebody is sick down in the dugout. You don't know that maybe he had in a scouting report that the right fielder has a weak arm, and that's why they decided to send the guy from first to home on a double. You don't always know these things, so keep that always in mind. Again, with the ego, this business is full of egos that need to be stroked. Make sure you be nice without getting pushed over. Make sure that you as a broadcaster are allowed to do your work as a broadcaster. Make sure that you're not being taken advantage of in your job. Make sure that when need be, you stand up for yourself. Always make sure that you do it in a diplomatic way and in an adult fashion, but that you're not losing your dignity in the process, okay? And as I mentioned before, do everything you can for your fellow media members. Everything that they do for you when you come to their ballpark, do for them when they come to yours, and do a little bit more. And that goes for the newspaper writers as well, who can sometimes be a bit curmudgeonly. Whatever it is, you're all part of the same industry. Try to help each other out as much as possible. Your relationship with the coaches, they should be your best friends. The coaches are critical. Don't ever, ever, ever betray their trust. Ever. You won't get it back. You're just not going to get it back. If they give you information that they tell you, keep to yourself, keep it to yourself. If they give you information that seems like it should be kept to yourself, but they didn't explicitly say it, keep it to yourself. It's really not complicated. Make sure that you are keeping their trust. If you don't, it creates all kinds of problems within the team. It starts creating friction within not only the coaching staff itself, but between the players and coaches, and you're at the center of it. It's the last place you want to be. You're going to have a lot of late night conversations. You're going to have private conversations. That stuff, unless it's explicitly for on-air use, stays between you and the coaching staff. Make sure that you're on time. Don't be a distraction. Don't hold the team up from getting where they need to be. Set an alarm. Set 2 alarms. Do whatever you need to do. Get to the bus on time. Get out of the restaurant on time. Don't ever be the one that they're waiting for, except at the end of the game. You got a post-game show to do. They understand that. But anywhere else, don't make them wait. And don't put them on the spot. What I mean by that is, don't ask an on-air question that you know is going to be problematic for them to answer, which means it's going to put them in a position where they have to second guess a decision that was made by the manager. or it puts them where they have to second guess a decision that was made by the umpires, which they can get fined for, by the way, if they criticize the umpires on the air. And by the way, you can too. They'll fine you as well if you're too harsh on the umpires, but that's a separate matter. Don't put them on the spot. Just, watch what you're asking them. Make sure that they are being given wiggle room to answer the way that they want to answer the question. You're working for the team. You're not working for a network. You don't need to be an investigative reporter. You don't need to ask these hard-nosed questions. Make sure that you're giving them wiggle room and making them comfortable on the air. Your relationships with players, they should not be your friends. I'm sorry. I know you're probably the same age as some of them, you younger guys at least. They're not your friends. They do dumb things. And when they do dumb things off air, when they do dumb things in the bar, when they do dumb things late at night, you don't want to be around because it has and will continue to make the newspaper. And when I say the newspaper, I mean social media, whatever. It happens all the time, several times a year in the Northwoods League. Some player gets in trouble for something that they shouldn't have been doing, and that has nothing to do with baseball. Don't be around it. Don't put yourself in a position where you're around it. Be friends with the coaches, be friends with the office staff, the players. Let them be players. Doesn't mean you can't have a relationship with them. Talk to them at the field, on the bus, in the hotel. Can become friendly with them in that way, and it helps you as well be a better broadcaster. You know the inside story. You know information that you wouldn't have known otherwise. So from that standpoint, it's a win-win. Off the field, away from baseball, let it be. Just let it be. You'll be thankful, I promise. And again, don't ever throw them under the bus on the air. Again, you just don't know. You don't know why they made the decisions that they made. There could have been a good reason behind it. Could have been that you just had a brain fart. You don't know. They're not professionals. They don't get paid yet. They're not really accountable to anybody. They're learning. They're learning the game, just like you, just like a lot of you young guys are. Learning the game, learning the business, learning the industry. Don't throw them under the bus. Let it be. I'm going to stop for a moment. Again, I'm going to see if anybody wants to chime in with anything, either through your microphone or through the chat box. Anybody have any questions so far? Nothing yet? Okay, we'll get back to it. Don't be shy, guys. Give me just a moment. We'll go back to the presentation. Relationship with management. Keep in mind, management invests their livelihood. This is the way they earn a paycheck for the owners. This is the way they pay the bills. It's their livelihood and it's their world. So make sure that you are letting them take care of their business. Don't get involved in the business side unless you're specifically asked to, and don't be a distraction to them. Come on, do your work. Do your work to the best of your ability. Contribute the way you're being asked to contribute, which is generally speaking, though not always, but generally speaking, as a broadcaster. Every now and again, you'll be asked to do something else. Maybe you have some media relations duties. Some of you may have some sales duties. Some of you may have concessions duties. I don't know what your individual arrangements are. But be clear, guys, before you start the season, if you're not already, what those arrangements are. Don't find yourself in a couple of weeks finding out that you need to set up the concession stand before every home game when you didn't know that going in. And if you find yourself in that situation, sit down with management, make sure you're saying, hey, if you want a quality broadcast, this is what I have to focus on, and work out something sooner rather than later. Don't find yourself bitter at the end of the season because you found yourself signed up for something that you didn't sign up for. But again, don't be a distraction. Don't be a headache. Come in, do your job, and get out. It's guerrilla warfare, basically. Come in, be quiet, get everything you need to get in the most quiet way possible, and get out at the end of the day. and go back and rest or do whatever you need to do to get your mind off of business for a while. That's the way it's supposed to be. If you do it that way, I promise you, you'll have a shelf life in this business. The ones that go head to head with management, unless you're Vin Scully, management always wins. Always. They'll find somebody else. I guarantee you. Proper on-air decorum. These are tips for radio, for television, and for life generally. Don't say anything about anybody that you wouldn't say to their face. Don't say anything on the air about anybody that you would not feel comfortable saying directly to their face. Because I guarantee you, guaranteed, if you say something unkind about somebody or something that crossed the line, they're going to find out, and you are going to have that face-to-face conversation. It's not going to be pleasant. And it's usually, not always, but usually somebody a little bit bigger than you. Make sure you're not using that microphone in a way that is bullying or in a way that makes you feel more powerful than you actually are. You're there to call baseball games. You're not there to insult. You're not there to demean. Just be careful with it. That microphone can become a little bit intoxicating sometimes. Remember, your microphone is hot from the second you plug it in. If you think you're off air, you thought wrong. Always keep in mind, the second that you turn on your equipment, the possibility exists that somebody somewhere can hear you. It's happened so many times. And I'm not just talking about a commercial break. I'm talking about somebody turned the equipment on and their crowd mic is on and somebody started the webcast too early, 15 minutes ahead of time, and now you're talking about some hot girl that you just saw walk in the stadium and the noise is being picked up on your crowd mic blasting through the webcast. It's far from unheard of. Be careful with everything you say once your equipment has been turned on. It's embarrassing to find yourself in those types of situations, and you just don't want to deal with it. Be professional. That microphone is hot from the second you turn it on. Imagine your mom is listening. She probably is. Again, it all comes back to making sure that your remarks on the air are not off color, that they're not controversial for any kind of reason. You're not a shock jock. You're not there to create ratings. You're not there to be a talk show host. You're there to call the baseball game and call it in an entertaining and informative way. So make sure you're clean. It should be a wholesome family presentation. There shouldn't be anything that makes somebody cringe and say, "Ugh, I don't want my kid listening to that." Just shouldn't happen. There's no reason for it. Make sure if you're a bit colorful off air, and we usually are as broadcasters, you're not bringing that to your on-air presentation. Stick to the facts. Always stick to the facts. They're tough to dispute. Personal opinions, we dispute those all the time. Facts are much tougher. So I'll give you an example. If you thought a pitch was called wrong, okay, here's a 2-1 pitch. A little bit outside, but it's called for a strike. Now, okay, have you criticized the umpire? No. Now, the next thing you can say is Jenkins' glove was set up 2 inches outside and he hit him right there. So now you've made the point that the glove was positioned outside and that's where it hit him, and so the pitch was outside. You've made your point that the umpire was wrong without saying, boy, the umpire blew that call, or boy, he's not seeing the ball well tonight. You understand what I'm saying? Stick to the facts. Stick to what your eyes are telling you and relay that information to the viewer without making it an opinion. And you'll keep yourself out of trouble that way. And you're able, if you need to, if you really feel the need to stick it to the umpire or to stick it to the other team. That's the way to do it. Present the facts as you see them and leave the opinions out of it. Be credible and be believable. Avoid hyperbole. Not everything is Game 7 of the World Series. Not everything is the best catch you've ever seen. Not everything is the farthest ball you've ever seen hit. It can't be. And it gets old very quickly when you try to, again, manufacture moments and manufacture achievements. The guy comes out after throwing 6 innings of 2-run, 5-hit baseball. Yeah, it's a quality outing. Is it Cy Young worthy? No. So don't make it out to be. There's that line that needs to be drawn between being excited about what's going on and being positive about what's going on, and questioning the listener's intelligence. You question the listener's intelligence, you lose the benefit of the doubt with him. You lose credibility. It's not worth it. Not worth it. There'll be plenty of exciting things generally going on in a game. You don't need to build it up to something it's not. And trust is everything. Without it, life in this business will be much tougher. Make sure that you can be trusted on the air. It means not telling flat out lies about, maybe the manager wants you to say that somebody was sick instead of out last night with a hangover. Okay, fine. He's ill. He's unavailable. That's okay. But make sure you're not telling out and out lies on the air. If a guy got arrested last night and it's all in all the papers, you're not going to say, he's out with a sore thumb today. It's a flat out lie, and everybody knows it. Don't try again to play games with the listener's intelligence. It's never going to work. It just doesn't work. And as I mentioned before, or alluded to before, don't generate controversy for the sake of it. It's not worth it. It's not professional. It doesn't need to be done. The season will be exciting enough. There's plenty of exciting moments. Don't, on air at least, try to manufacture a rivalry between two players. If maybe one player hit another player with a pitch, if there's no background to it, if it's the first time it's happened, don't try to say, oh, well, now the benches are going to clear. No, this guy just got hit by a pitch. Now, if it's revenge for something that happened 2 innings ago, or last game there was a high slide by somebody, okay, now we might have an issue. Now you can bring the backstory in. But don't try to just create manufactured controversy. It's not a soap opera. It's a baseball game. Dealing with the umpires. We all love to hate umpires. It's a national pastime in and of itself. Guys in the Northwoods League, they're new at this too. They're young. They're 17 to 21 years, most of them. Same age as the players, most of them. They're new. Cut them a little bit of slack. They're going to get calls wrong way more often than you see in the major leagues or in the high minor leagues. They're going to have calls that will absolutely baffle you. And you wonder if they even had their eyes open. It's going to happen. Again, stick with the facts and just describe what's happening. If a guy was called out and he was safe by 3 steps, you can say, well, it looked like he beat it, and based on the reaction, it seems that he did, because this is where you need to state facts. The first base coach is jumping up and down in the box, and the batter just looked like he wanted to throw his helmet down, and the dugout is up in arms. Those are facts. But you can state those facts without saying, boy, the umpire blew that call. That's the way to do it as a professional. It's very unlikely, by the way, that the crew has it out for your team. Please don't start with this crew is biased or this crew just doesn't like us, or leave it out. Those guys are trying to move up. And if they constantly have wrong calls, and they're being evaluated every day, by the way, they're not going to move up to the next level. So whatever, if they happen to hate your right fielder, guess what? They're going to leave it aside because they're trying to get up to the next level. Don't start with the whole they have it out for us thing. It just isn't. It isn't so. Make sure, by the way, you as a broadcaster go over the rule book at least once a year. Try to do it before the season starts, and know the rules and understand not only the rules but the signals that the umpires use. They'll use a lot of hand signals. It helps you be aware of what's going on. It helps you anticipate what's coming next. It helps you understand maybe why they made the call they did, maybe why they're in the position that they're in. And when there's a close play, you can let the listener know, well, the second base umpire rotated over to third because it makes you sound like a genius. Maybe you are already, but in any case, it'll make you sound very smart and know the rules. The last thing you need is for something out of the ordinary to happen on the field, some obscure rule, and you just don't know what's going on. You don't know how to handle it. You don't know why what has been called has been called. You just don't understand it. You're at a loss. The last thing your listeners need is for the person they're counting on for information to not be able to provide information. Makes you useless. So while you probably can't memorize every single rule in that 150-page rule book, go over it once before the season, and maybe when that rare play happens, it'll jog your memory and say, oh, this is why they're calling what they're calling. Believe me, it'll help you understand what's going on better. Your prep and your research. Make sure that you, if you don't already, have a scorecard that you feel comfortable with. Most of you have, again, done baseball before, so you probably are already comfortable with something. I mentioned earlier, be an information junkie. Know everything about everybody participating in that game, about the team's history, about recent trends, about, again, the starting pitcher. Make sure you have every piece of information about the starting pitcher. Ask your manager for the scouting report. They'll likely give it to you as long as you promise not to leave it behind somewhere. They're going to give it to you. And every batter that comes up, you're going to know their tendencies and be able to explain why the team is making the shift that they're making, or why they're going to the bullpen at this part of the game, because maybe the batter doesn't hit the curveball well and you're bringing in a lefty who throws a good curveball. This is golden information that can be at your fingertips if you seek it out. And if you really want to have it, you'll have it. And it can really make your broadcast that much more enriching. Information can be found in game notes. Some teams do game notes, some don't. Media guides, newspapers, websites, through your contacts with the other team, whether it's the opposing broadcaster or maybe they have a media relations director. Speak to the newspaper guy. If you're on the road, speak to the newspaper writer of the other team. He'll often have good stories or some good insight about what's going on that maybe the team doesn't want to tell you about because they feel like it's a competitive disadvantage. Organization is absolutely critical. And what I mean by that is it's not enough just to have all this information at your fingertips. You've got to be able to access it. You've got to be able to lay out your information in an efficient manner. And it can be really difficult in a lot of Northwoods League ballparks because your space is very limited. You might have a limited amount of counter space. Maybe you already have somebody on your left and your right, and therefore there's no wall to put your information up on. Whatever it is, you got to find a way to space out and make sure that your stats are right in front of you, that your scorecard is in a comfortable position, that your bios are in a position where they're not going to fall off the counter and suddenly you have 30 pieces of paper on the floor that you have to try to organize during a broadcast. This is part of getting to the ballpark and knowing the lay of the land, figuring out where your phone line is and where you're getting your internet access, looking up at the scoreboard and knowing where all the key pieces of information are on the scoreboard, knowing where the netting is so you can judge where foul balls are going, all these things. This is part of it. This is part of getting the lay of the land when you get into the ballpark. Again, you have limited space. Make sure you use it wisely. Don't get caught off guard, meaning make sure you're asking before every game, hey, has there been a roster change? Has there been a change in the starting pitcher that I need to know about so I can prep not 15 minutes before airtime when I get the lineup, but now, basically. Make sure you're asking questions, even if they seem like you shouldn't have a need to ask them. Stuff changes in the Northwoods League constantly. Rosters change, starting lineups change, even at the last minute. Things change. Ask those questions, even if you don't feel like you should have to. Use info that will put things in context. You're going to have, if you're doing things right, so much information at your disposal, but you just can't throw out random information on the air. It has to be useful to the moment that you're dealing with. So talking about the new center fielder when he's sitting on the bench, why? Why waste the time? Talk about the game. But when he comes into the game for the first time, now you have a wealth of information that you can use. You can take up 3-4 minutes of airtime, just letting fans know about the new player. That's part of it, using info that will put things in context. Trends. If the team is hitting 400 in the last week with the bases loaded, things like that. That's the stuff you need to have at your fingertips. You need to have it written down and ready to go on an available piece of paper, because when the bases are loaded for the first time in that game, you don't have time at that point to go shifting through your stacks of notes trying to find that stat. You need to be able to know exactly where it is when you need it. So make sure you're positioning your notes in a way where you know where everything is and it is accessible at a moment's notice, so that you can use that information not when it's just random, but when it's in context and you sound so much more knowledgeable. I'm going to stop sharing here for just a moment. I want to come back to you guys. Does anybody have any questions so far? You guys are scaring me. Got a quiet bunch here. Anybody with any questions? Anybody with anything they want to put in the chat box? Okay. So we're going to pause here at this point. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We will come back at about 3:12 Central Time, and we'll continue on with the presentation. And then at the end, we'll have a question and answer. And God willing, some of you guys will ask some questions at the end. Maybe that's what you're saving it for. So we will talk to you guys in 10 minutes, okay? Talk to you then. All right, everybody, welcome back. I hope you were able to get a quick bathroom break in there and quick bite to eat and whatever you needed to do. I saw a couple things pop up on the chat box. Yeah, Pete, it can get pretty cold up there, especially early in the year. We even got some snow, I think, in Duluth at one point very, very early in the season, which was just mind-boggling to me. Yeah, it can get cold up there, so make sure you check the weather before you leave for those particular trips. Traverse City can get cold too early in the year. So yeah, check the weather. Just be prepared, broadcaster, right? Be prepared for where you're going, and make sure that you pack appropriately. And by the way, bring rain gear wherever you go. I don't mean poncho. I mean, make sure you have a cap. Make sure you have a coat with a hood. You're going to have to run in and out of the press box if it rains, especially if you're the home team. If you're doing a home game, you might have to go down and pull tarp, or you might have to go down and check the radar or converse with the general manager about what the plans are. So be prepared on game day, especially. Guys, again, if there's anything you want to talk about, even if it's not a question for me specifically, feel free to put it in the chat box, and we'll take it from there. Rick just posted here as far as prep, Kokomo. Yes, the Northwoods League, I believe, still does use point streak. Somebody who was in the league last year, maybe Rick or somebody can confirm that. But as of, I think, 2 years ago, Northwoods League did in fact use a point streak. If they don't still, they do have a similar live stat program that's available free for the public. You can log on at any time. There's probably an app as well, and you can get a full accounting of the game, a live box score. Thank you, James. They still use point streak. So it's all there right at your fingertips. Use it on air. Make sure it's on your computer, it's on your laptop during the game. You can, cross-reference it with your official score that you're keeping. It'll tell you things like the number of pitches that a pitcher has for the game, which can be critically important in a league with a pitch count and pitch count criteria. You can go back and check to see how something might have been scored if you're not sitting in the same booth as the official scorekeeper. Things like that. It's very, very useful system. And you can go back and check the box score from the last time those two teams played if you need a certain piece of information during the game. It's incredibly useful, so make sure you have it available on your computer during the game. Thank you, Pete, for posting that as well, the exact link. Not only should you have point streak on your laptop during the game, make sure you have a live scores of everything that's going on around the Northwoods League, Major League Baseball scores as well. It's always good filler to be able to talk about what's going on around the big leagues that night as well. Have as much. Again, it's all about having information at your disposal. So we will get back to the presentation here. And again, there'll be plenty of time for questions or general discussions toward the end. All right, creating storylines. Why does this matter? It's not always obvious. You should know and you should think about going into a broadcast. Who are we watching and why? Two teams just aren't randomly playing each other. For the parents that are watching, maybe that's good enough. Maybe that's a compelling enough reason. And for the diehard fan who just can't get enough of Northwoods League baseball, it's enough for them that there's just a game that night. For the average person, they have a million other entertainment options. They can even just sit at a wall, stare at a wall that night and do nothing. There's a million other things to be doing. So the fact that just two teams are playing on a random night in a random place is not enough. It's your job, and it may seem obvious that there's a reason to be excited, but it's not for the average person. So you have to really, it seems counterintuitive, you really have to think about, as you're doing your prep for the game, why does this game matter? Why does it matter not to you or to the diehard? Why does it matter to the average listener or average viewer who can choose to do something else. And you have to make sure that you are presenting the game, especially early in the game, along those lines. Why does this matter? Why is this important? Why can this kind of change the direction of the season? Why does this matter for a particular player? Maybe there's some record that they're chasing. What sets this game apart from every other game? It's important. It should be uh, less obvious than you think it is, okay? So make sure you're thinking about that before the game. And when you come on the air, it's not just uh, we're here in Battle Creek where Rockford plays Battle Creek in the second game of a 2-game series. Okay, who cares? Who cares? We're here live tonight in Battle Creek where the Bombers are going for a franchise record 14 consecutive wins. Meanwhile, Rockford is throwing their ace right-hander looking to break the streak. Okay, now we have something. It may not win everybody over, but now we at least have a reason. And it's not always going to be a huge winning streak, and it's not always going to be somebody going for the home run record, but come up with some compelling reason why the average person should spend 3 hours with you on a given night. It's really important that you do that, and it helps you focus as well on the important things going on during the game. It helps you refocus on the important things going on during the course of the game. So while, again, it may just be another night on the road, you can't think of it that way because it's not you that's listening and it's not you that's investing their time when they could be somewhere else. So make sure you're always giving people a reason. Sometimes storylines will shift during the course of the game. So be adjustable. Sometimes what you talked about in the pregame show or in the first inning goes out the window by the third inning. Don't stick to some pre-made story about what this game should be about if it's no longer relevant. You're beating a dead horse at that point. Also, don't, as I mentioned, don't keep hammering home a preconceived storyline if it's no longer relevant. There's no reason for it. If it's done, if it's no longer a story, if it's faded into the background, let it go. You may have spent a lot of time developing it. You may have spent a lot of time researching it. Guess what? If it's no longer relevant, you can't hold on to it. It's no longer relevant. Move on to what's relevant during the game. Pre-game focus. I hope all of you have watched the video link that was sent out by the league that was probably routed through your general managers, and I also routed it to you over the last few emails as well from the league about pregame show specifically, but there's some other areas that were touched on in that video. Incredibly important piece of video because this will help you focus your pregame show. This is the way it's supposed to be done specifically on the Northwoods League video webcast, and not only should be done, but needs to be done in terms of timing, in terms of sequence, in terms of communication with your director, in terms of laying out what the pregame show should look like. Everything in that video, I kid you not, and this is not hyperbole, critically important for you to follow to a T. We, especially if we're broadcasting on a non-network situation, are a lot more free to do what we want to do. We kind of take a break when we want to take a break. We come back, maybe we can throw in an extra 30-second spot. You can tell the producer to throw in an extra 30-second spot because maybe we need to run to the bathroom or we're going to be a little bit late coming back. That stuff will work in certain scenarios. I don't want you getting into that habit because when you get to the level that hopefully you will get to, which is a network style broadcast, that stuff doesn't fly. It doesn't work to go to break whenever you want to go to break. When I was first starting in radio, we would do a pregame show and we would talk for 5 minutes. And when we felt like we had nothing else to talk about, that's when we went to break. And if it was 4 minutes and 32 seconds, or if it was 4 minutes and 56 seconds, or it was 5 minutes and 20, nobody was even paying attention. We just talked until we ran out. And then we would keep it at break until we thought of something else to talk about. It was completely disorganized. It doesn't work at the network level, which is what you want to get to. So start preparing yourself now. Everything at the network level is timed to the second, not to the 5 seconds or to the second. You go to a break at 6:58 and 30 seconds, bam, that's when it is. That's when if you're still talking, you get cut off. There's no way around it because the network is selling advertising. They've got to get in their advertisements. The network affiliates have to get in their station IDs. You've got to get back and make sure that you're not talking over the national anthem, which has also been timed out. All of this stuff is timed to the second at the network level. Get used to it now. You've got to get used to it now. Your pregame show should flow like a well-oiled machine. It is the one part of the broadcast that you have complete control over. You don't have to worry about anything else. You're not at the mercy of how fast the pitcher is pitching. You're not at the mercy of what's going on in the game, or if there's an injury, or if there's a pit. Nothing else is controlling you. You set the pregame show from start to finish with your pregame opener, your scene setter, with your information in the first segment, with the way you present the starting lineups, with your pregame interview. You have everything that is laid out to your specifications. Take advantage of it, make it flow like a well-oiled machine, time it out to the second. And if nothing else, it will make your start to the broadcast, your start to the actual game, a lot more relaxed, a lot more calm, because you know the pregame show was without mistakes, was without problems. You're ready to go in a good situation for the start of the game. Bad pregame show leads to a bad first inning. Bad first inning means you're trying to play catch up for the next 3 innings. It throws off your entire broadcast. Focus on the pregame show. Make sure everything is exactly where you want it to be. According to the video you watched, all the timing is there. When I say use a timing sheet, that's basically your timing sheet, the way George laid it out in the video. So make sure once more before the season starts, you take a look at that video and write down exactly when every element of your pregame show is supposed to happen. And keep an eye on the clock. If you're supposed to be at a break at 6:57 and you see it's 6:56 and 30 seconds, don't try to get in the starting lineups. You can't do it in 30 seconds. Don't try to get in a pregame interview with a sponsor because he's not going to be there to talk for 15 seconds after you introduce him. Make sure you're keeping an eye on the clock and you're giving material that is fit for that given situation. So if you have 30 seconds left to talk before the next break, get in a quick sponsor read, talk about an upcoming promotion that you can do in 20 or 25 seconds. Talk about if there's a big game around the league that as a fan of your team, you'll want to keep an eye on that game because it could affect the standings. That's the stuff you need to try to fit in when you have a limited amount of time. But you got to keep an eye on the clock during the pregame show. Think about how you're going to fill the time, not as you're filling it, but in advance. Make sure you have a plan A and a plan B. And again, plenty of information at your disposal before you start the broadcast. So you're not, oh my gosh, I have 2 minutes left in the segment here. I don't know what I'm going to fill it with. Let me start rustling through papers. That never works. It sounds like garbage. So make sure you're planning out your pregame show as much as possible. Radio versus video. Guys, this is something that the Northwoods League is really focusing on this year. They want their video broadcast sounding like a television and looking like a television presentation. And they want to make sure that it has a television feel to it. Now, what does that mean for you? It depends. Some of you are assigned exclusively to radio broadcast. Some of you are doing a webcast only. Some of you are doing a simulcast where you're on video and radio at the same time, or video and audio at the same time. So it means different things to, different announcers this year. But you have to make sure that video broadcast on the Northwoods League website looks and sounds like a video broadcast. That's what they want. That's what they demand. that is what you're going to have to go with. Radio versus video, two completely different skill sets. I've heard TV people who sound like hell on the radio, and they don't have a clue what they're doing. They don't understand how to relay visual information to the listener because the visuals have always been there, and they simply talk over them and tell a story and let the viewer see the visuals. And I've heard radio announcers who are incredibly gifted. They don't know how to transfer that to television. They just talk and talk and talk and have no concept that the picture is up on the screen. And oftentimes the picture that's up on the screen is completely unrelated to what they continue to blabber on about because they have a radio presentation and they just have no experience in taking direction. Two completely different skill sets. I hope as many of you on the webinar today have the opportunity this year to do both because they're different skill sets. They're both valuable. They both will help you develop as a broadcaster. But it's incredibly difficult to do one while you're supposed to be doing the other. It just doesn't look or sound good. As I mentioned, you're an artist on the radio. You have a blank canvas and the paint, and you get to paint the picture from nothing. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling. And some of us thrive on this, of having this blank canvas and just being able to color it in our own unique way. And I know a lot of you probably have heroes, idols, models that you model your broadcast after, professionals at the major league level. And everyone at the major league level sounds different. There's a reason for that. It's artistry, and no two artists can paint the same way. That's the beauty of radio. I grew up on radio. It's where I got my start. I moved to television later. I had this fondness for being able to create something out of nothing. On video, on television, you're not the artist. You're the tour guide in the museum. It's not downplaying anything. It's not a lesser skill, but it's a much different skill. The pictures are already there. The paintings are already there. They're done by the cameraman. They're done by the director who's selecting which painting, quote unquote, which shot, which camera angle to show the viewer. You are there to take the viewer through the tour, to help them understand what they're seeing, to paint a little bit of context, but for the most part, to tell the story behind what they're seeing, to give that information, to make it more fulfilling, and not just leave them looking at a painting with no information as to who painted it or why they painted it or why it looks the way it does. You're the tour guide rather than the artist. It's difficult to switch from one to the next. You might be doing it nightly. You might be on the radio one night. You might be on the video webcast the next night. You've got to make sure you know what you're broadcasting that night. Remind yourself going in, hey, this is the skill set that I need to bring on this particular evening, because one is so much different than the other. Video play-by-play. You are taking your cues from the monitor. You're almost calling the game off the monitor. So as much as you can, if possible, at home, have a monitor. Ask your team if they can provide you some sort of monitor or a separate laptop where you can look at the game live. Ask your director if they can provide you with a live feed so you can see exactly what they are giving you. They're feeding you the cues. Your cue is what is being shown on camera at that given moment. It's critical that you have live access to what's being beamed out. Otherwise, everything is thrown, the timing is thrown off. Your communication with your director, even if it's silent, is critical. Try as much as possible, and it's not always possible, but as much as possible to be within eye view of your director. So you can, if possible, signal to each other. Maybe there's something going on the field that you want him to show. Maybe you have a system worked out with each other that you sense that there's a pitching change that's about to be made, or somebody is warming up down in the bullpen and you want them to show the guy warming up. There's all sorts of things that you're aware of because you have your eye on the field at all times, but he may not be aware of because he's talking, or she because the director's talking to their camera people or they're working on something technically. They just don't know. Have a system that you develop between yourselves, whatever it is. But try to keep that director within eye view of yourself at your home ballpark. There is much more opportunity than radio for stories and interesting facts and stats on video, because you don't have to worry about painting every single visual piece. It's already there up on screen. The work is done for you. Your work now is to give it life, is to give those pictures life, is to, when somebody comes up on the screen, have an interesting fact or a stat ready. You don't need to say he's a right-handed hitter because the viewer already sees he's right-handed. You don't need to say he has an open stance because the viewer already sees he has an open stance. You probably don't even have to say he's 1 for 3 today because there'll be a graphic saying he's 1 for 3 today. You fill in everything else. And this is where TV, this is the difficulty of TV. A lot of people say TV is easy. The work is done for you. The video is already up on screen. But what can you add at that point? You need context. You need stories. You need background information. You need relevant statistics. This is where talking to the coaching staff helps. They will give you insight on how guys are developing throughout the year, what they're struggling with, what their strengths are, how they've managed to improve. Maybe there's something going on with them that you don't know about, that's an interesting tidbit for on-air use, and make sure it is for on-air use. This is where the guys that rule TV, this is why they rule TV. Not because they're able to paint the picture, but because they're able to take the listener, or the viewer in this case, through the story. This is the difference. Be disciplined enough to let the video speak for itself. Us radio guys, and I can still consider myself a radio guy, we talk, and we feel the need to talk some more. And we very rarely, although we should as radio people, but we very rarely let the game just breathe, because we feel like there's so much information that the viewer needs or the listener needs because they're blind. They can't see anything. We got to spoon feed them everything. But on video, you can let the picture speak for itself every now and again. You don't need to fill every second. Let it breathe a little bit. Let it speak for itself a little bit. Okay? If the guy throws down his bat in disgust at the end of an at-bat, guess what? You don't need to say it. He chucks his bat. Let the cameraman follow him off the field. Let him see him throw his helmet and go off into break silently. It's okay. It's okay. Video is amazing medium. Let it speak for itself sometimes. Just add context and add some color and add commentary on significant plays. Make sure that you're not letting big plays go without commentary for too long. Again, big moment, nothing wrong with letting it breathe, but you got to come back and let people know what just happened and why it was such a big play. You just can't let it silence drag on forever. Otherwise, people who haven't been tuned in, they don't realize what just went on. They may have tuned in 5 minutes ago and didn't just realize that the guy extended his hitting streak to 25 games, or that, somebody just came back after they lost their dog earlier today and hit a big home run to put the team ahead. They don't know. So it's okay with letting it breathe. Make sure you come back and fill in the blanks, add the commentary. Radio play-by-play, much, much different, as you guys know. You got to give the inning and the score again and again and again and again and again. And if you feel like you're giving the inning and the score too much, give it more. You can never give it enough. As much as you feel like people are tuning in and hanging on your every word, I'm sorry to tell you, they're not. They're not. They're flipping through the stations. They're going to get sandwich. They're going to talk to their family, and they're coming back and they're listening. Or if they're driving in their car, they may have tuned out during a commercial break, and maybe 15 minutes later, when they remembered, oh shoot, I got to get back to that ball game, they're tuning in again. Always assume that your listener just tuned in a couple of minutes ago. And if you do that, you'll know that the inning and score needs to be given again and again and again. Remember, your listener's blind. They know nothing. Nothing. You see everything. They know nothing. They don't know if the batter is right-handed or left-handed. The same goes for the pitcher. They don't know that the team has shifted and now there's a big hole through the right side. They don't know that that speedy runner is being kept close because the pitcher has a brilliant pickoff move. They don't know that the left fielder is playing a few steps deeper than usual. They don't know. They don't know any of these things. It's up to you to tell them. What you see may be so obvious to you, you feel like it doesn't need to be said. It needs to be said. Always. As a pitcher working out of the stretch or the windup, you don't need to give that every pitch, God forbid. But at the beginning of the at-bat, yeah, it's important to say, where is the catcher set up? Is he set up down the middle? Maybe on the inside corner? Is he framing the pitches up well? And is he getting the calls as a result of that? Is the first baseman holding the runner on? Or maybe he's not holding him on with 2 outs and he's not as concerned because you guys are up by 3 runs in the 9th inning. The listener knows none of this stuff. You got to paint the picture. Paint the picture. That's what you're there for. Build your vocabulary. Just the word pitch. I've heard guys say the word pitch 500 times during the course of a game. He pitches, he pitches, he pitches, he pitches. Here's the pitch. Here comes the pitch. The pitch, the pitch, the pitch. That can be said so many different ways. Here comes the 2-1. Jenkins hurls. Jenkins brings it home. Here Jenkins fires away. Jenkins hurls. Jenkins tosses the 2-1. Jenkins with the stretch and the 3-1 delivery. So many different ways you can say the same thing. But the pitch, the pitch, the pitch, the pitch, the pitch gets really, really old really, really quickly. And if you do that 72 times a year, your listeners are going to want to shoot themselves. They're going to want to pitch you through a wall. Build your vocabulary up. That goes for everything, not just with pitches, but with every repetitive thing you can use. But the economy of words is very important on the radio. What do I mean by economy of words? Saying the most with the least amount of words. Become cheap with your words. It may be counterintuitive because you're on the radio, but the more you can say in fewer words, the more you can let the game breathe a little bit and you don't have to talk blah 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 blah, blah and just ramble on. You've said what you needed to say in the fewest amount of words possible. And number 2, it will allow you to get more critical information in. So if it takes you 30 seconds to say that somebody's coming up to the plate and they went 1 for 3 today, and it takes you 30 seconds to say that, you have no room for anything else. But if you can minimize your words, 3-hole hitter, Sam Smith, up to bat now, steps in for the right side. He's 1 for 3 with a single. You've said everything you needed to say within, what was that, 3 seconds? That's all you needed to say. Now you can come back with other details. Now we need to know if where the catcher is set up. Now we need to know how big of a lead the base runner has. You can get maybe the inning and scoring it again if you need to. All these things. Maybe the wind has changed direction. Maybe the manager is now on the top step of the dugout because it looks like he's ready to make a change. Economy of words is critical. Say the most you can in the fewest amount of words. Make sure you're filling in the blanks. What do I mean by filling in the blanks? I have a system, I call it, and this is my own personal system, it's called front end, back end, okay? In baseball, the action happens quickly. It takes forever for the action to happen, but when it does, it happens very quickly. You as the radio broadcaster don't have the ability to get in every piece of information you want to get in while the play is ongoing. It's impossible. It happens too quickly. And if you try to do it, you get so far behind the play that the crowd will make noise, and 10 seconds later, you're saying whether the guy was safe or out. I already know whether you're safe or out. I heard the crowd. But you're so far behind because you're trying to squeeze in all these details. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. You have to limit the details you give while the ball is in play. So if there's a sharp ground ball to third base, it's got to be quick. Here's a 2-1 swing and a hard ground ball to third, backhanded stop by Smith. He's up on his feet. Hard throw to first, the stretch, and they got him by a step and a half. Condense. Now, after the play is over, now you can come back. Now you can say it was a fastball on the outer half of the plate. Now you can say that the third baseman took a hard step to his backhand side before he lunged at it. Now you can say he was an inch from third base when he was able to reel it in. Now you can say, boy, that was a heck of a stretch by the first baseman. Now you can say that the batter got a little bit of a stumble coming out of the batter's box. Now you can fill in those details, but you can't do all that while the play is going on. There's no room for it. So the front end is while the ball is in play. Now after the play is over, on the back end, you can fill in all those blanks that you couldn't fill in before. Okay? Front end, back end. Make sure you keep that in mind during your radio call. Details. So many details you need to give during the course of the game. I'm talking about uniform colors, talking about where the dugouts are, whether there's an on-deck circle or not. Is the pitcher tugging at his ball cap? Maybe he's trying to wipe the sweat off of his brow. Is the chalk line erased near home plate or the batter's box? Is the chalk line been erased? These are details that might seem irrelevant to you, but to a listener at home that, again, cannot see, you're giving them the gift of vision. It's like a blind person. You're giving them the gift of vision by detailing all these things that may seem so irrelevant and so minuscule. They're big because every detail you're able to give makes the listener feel more and more like they're there, like they're next to you, like they're in the stands. And that's the point. That's the whole point of radio play-by-play, is to bring them into the ballpark, is to put them next to you in the press box, is to make them smell the popcorn, is to allow them to hear the guy in the second row harassing the umpire. This is what you're there for. So it's not just ball, strike, out, inning, and score, single, double, triple, home run. No, that's the foundational stuff. But the details is what it's all about. Never feel like you're giving too many details, and never stop searching for more details, down to where the shadows are. Where are the shadows? Because it paints a picture, and it might actually affect the play because maybe the guy's having trouble seeing a pop-up in the shadows. The sunshine, too. Which way the wind is blowing. If you say the wind is blowing hard out the right field and suddenly the ball jumps over the right field wall for a home run, who looks smart? You. You look smart. You look like you know what you're talking about. Details. As I mentioned before, facts over commentary. Give the facts. Commentary is second. Don't kill time, fill time. What do I mean by that? You may be dragging in the course of a game. Maybe the game is out of hand. It's a blowout. It's a boring game. You're thinking to yourself, oh, God, how am I going to get through this? 4 innings to go. It's taking forever. I just want to get out of here. You're going to have games like that. You're going to have to fake a little bit of enthusiasm, but you're going to have games like that. And you're thinking to yourself, how am I going to kill time? It's the worst attitude. Don't kill time, because the listener will sense that you are struggling to fill in the blanks. Fill time. Have that information that we talked about that you're not going to use 90% of the time. This is the time to use it. This is the time to use all that golden stuff that you're like, oh, I can't believe I did all this prep. Remember I talked about this earlier with you guys? I can't believe I did all this prep and I used half of it. Here is the opportunity to use that other half. Here's the time to basically empty your storage case. Empty your storage case of information. Use those golden nuggets that you couldn't use before because it just, the situation didn't present itself, or you just didn't have the time available during the broadcast. This is the time. Not to figure out, oh boy, how am I going to, no. Oh, you know what, folks, I wanted to tell you this story last week. We didn't have an opportunity because it's a heck of a ball game, but I want to let you know now about this is the time, okay? Reset and reset often. What do I mean by that? Again, folks are tuning in and out of your broadcast. As much as you would wish, as much as you would like that not to be the reality, that's what it is. They're constantly tuning in and out. And they may be coming to you for the first time in the 5th inning or the 8th inning. Make sure you are giving resets. What do I mean by reset? For those of you unfamiliar, a quick recap of why and how we've gotten to where we've gotten in this ball game. So, for instance, here in the top of the 5th inning, Battle Creek up 5-2 on the strength of a 3-run home run by Jim Jenkins in the 3rd inning. So you're giving the inning and the score and a big moment. Okay, now people have a little bit of a grasp about why Battle Creek is ahead. Maybe you have time during a conference at the mound to go a little bit more in depth. Top of the 5th, Battle Creek up 5-2. Jim Jenkins with a 3-run blast in the 3rd inning to put the Bombers out in front. Meanwhile, Bomber right-hander Sam Smith pitching a pretty good ball game so far. He's issued 1 walk, struck out 5, and has allowed 3 hits. Done. Reset. And you've brought listeners up to speed not on every single at-bat that has happened in the ball game, but the big stuff, the important stuff. And you've done it in basically, 10 seconds, 12 seconds? It's a good investment of your time. And it makes everybody feel like even though they've missed out on 20 minutes of the broadcast, an hour of the broadcast, that you've gotten them caught up on the big stuff and they feel like they're back in the ball game, like they understand, okay, I may have missed out, but I'm caught up enough that I know what's been going on, and now I can feel like I'm back at the ball game again. Resets are so important. Do them often. Not every at-bat. It's ridiculous. Maybe every 5 minutes, and at the very least, once every half inning. Reset. It's a good friend of yours. Reset. Understand the umpires. I mentioned this earlier. Understand their signals. Understand why they're set up the way they're set up. Understand what they're doing out there. Understand the rotation. Talk to the umpires. They're human beings, and it might be tough to believe sometimes, but they may be in the office before the game if they need to talk to the general manager. You may see them at the restaurant that night if it's a team restaurant. Go up and talk to them and say, hey, there was this thing that happened in the game tonight. Explain to me what exactly happened there. Why did you make the call? Or why did you give this signal to your partner? Every piece of information you can get helps you understand what you're seeing better. Not only helps make you smarter, but you can relay that to the listener, and they understand the game a little bit better as well. Win-win situation. I'm going to pause here. I want to see if you guys have any questions or if there's anything that has appeared on the chat box since we last spoke.
Hey, Mike, I got a question with Rick.
Yes, go right ahead.
You're talking about resetting on radio. How would you reset for a video-only broadcast? Is it similar? Is it the same? What are the differences there?
Same exact way. On video broadcasts, sometimes you'll have a graphic that you'll have appear up on the screen a couple of times a game with the key moments, basically. And if you have that, then that'll be helpful. It's not everything. It'll only be a couple times a game, but at least you'll have that appear on screen. But television is a good medium for resets as well because, again, people are tuning in and out. So get it in quickly. Make the most economy of words. Don't drag on. You don't have to say with the 5 strikeouts that Smith has, he struck out 1 guy in the first and 3 in the struck out the side in the third. He added another one. It's too much in detail. But give the big stuff and give it as often as you would on radio. Once every half inning. Once every half inning or once every 5 minutes if the half inning is dragging on a little bit to keep it fresh and to make sure that people who tune in and out get caught up quickly. And by the way, it helps you as well because it reminds you of the key moments. Sometimes we forget. We really do. It's a long season, and there's a lot going on during the course of the game. We're trying to keep everything on our scorecard. We're getting direction from the director in our ear about what we're supposed to be talking about. There's all sorts of stuff that goes on. When you give a reset, it reminds you as well about the big moments that have happened, and it helps give some context to what you might be talking about as well. So from that standpoint, radio and television are no different. It's one of the few times where they're actually the same. I hope that answered your question. Anybody with anything else before we resume?
Hey, Mike, this is Pete.
Hey,
I
Pete.
just wanted to, I guess, kind of piggyback off of something you said with the video broadcast and kind of syncing up with radio for those of us who are doing both.
Yep.
And mentioning that George is like super, wanting to emphasize that this year, that, a lot of times I know they want us starting at that 6 minutes before first pitch, but, a lot of places in this league are very different in how they do their pregame stuff. So, you'll see like first pitches will happen before the anthem, or they'll happen after the anthem, or especially early on in the season, the interns aren't quite everywhere they need to be and things get late or things get ahead and stuff like that. So it's just something to watch out for. And I think I'm, at least on my end, I know I'm putting my radio producer and the video director kind of in contact with each other so that it all kind of links up. So just a couple things that I talked about with George that could be potential pitfalls to just be aware of. I know at the Express we have like a timing sheet that we put together, so I'm going to try to get that together for everybody. But yeah, every park is super different, and especially for the home parks, when you're doing the video broadcast, it's important to know like when they think the anthem will be happening, when all that kind of stuff will be going down. So.
No doubt whatsoever, and that's a great point, Pete. Not every ballpark runs right on cue. You just have to do things the way you have them laid out. You need to get the break when you need to get the break. There are commercials, especially if you have radio broadcasts, there are commercials that are waiting to be played. There is a station ID that legally needs to go on the air at a certain time that you can't afford to lose track of. If you come back and unfortunately you have to kill another minute or two, it's going to happen, but try to stay on track with your end of things as much as you possibly can. If you come back and the anthem is playing and it shouldn't be playing, and somebody complains about it, that's something that you can take up with George and say, hey, we did exactly what we were supposed to be doing. There's nothing else you can do except follow the guidelines that were laid out for you. But be aware, though, that, again, you might have to kill some time. Maybe you came back at 6:59 expecting a 7:02, whatever it is, first pitch, and suddenly there's a ceremonial first pitch getting thrown out, or there's some other recognition going on down on the field. You have to be prepared for that. Go over the other games that are happening around the league tonight, the standings, and where your team is at and how the games that are being played tonight might affect things. What's coming up on the upcoming homestand, the promotions, try to sell, some tickets, all these things you can use as filler. But don't get caught off guard because these things are going to happen, and they'll happen, unfortunately, probably too often. But it doesn't mean that you should be thrown off of what you're trying to do in terms of taking the breaks at the times that are assigned to you. Especially if you're on a radio network too. I know some Northwoods League teams are actually on multi-station networks. Every radio station can't go off on its own and play the commercials when they feel like it, or it's not a network anymore. So try to stick with the plan as much as the plan will allow it, and don't let other things out of your control kind of dictate that, or at least try to limit it. In terms of, by the way, you mentioned sometimes that you're going to be doing a simulcast, radio and video. We'll get to that in a few moments. I'm not neglecting it. It's going to be the toughest part of what you do, not only because a simulcast is difficult to begin with, but especially because the Northwoods League is pushing so hard for the video component to look and sound like a video broadcast. Simulcasts traditionally don't sound like and look like TV broadcasts. They're geared more toward the radio side. So it's going to be an adjustment, but we'll talk more about that later. Does anybody have anything else at the moment? Okay. We'll get back into this. Okay. I mentioned painting the picture, using the markings on the field, foul lines, bases, the warning track, behind the plate as well, the batter's boxes, the mound, anything that has a physical name that you can give. Use it to describe what's going on. Don't assume your listener knows anything. Your listener might not know that somebody is on a three-game hitting streak. Your listener might not know that the first baseman is cramping up out there a little bit. They don't know because they can't see. So make sure you're giving that information. Know what's important. Critical for any play-by-play announcer, but especially radio announcer, to understand what's important. Uh, the opening pitch of the at bat can't get too excited about. Oh, swing and a miss. It's not important. The final pitch of the at bat is usually the one that's the most important, or the setup pitch at least can be critically important. But make sure you're not screaming over nothing. And context is king. Something that might be a dramatic moment in the game, you might understand perfectly well why it's dramatic, or might be game turning, or might be a personal achievement for a particular player. Your listener probably doesn't. They're probably not a hardcore fan that is in touch with the team 72 times a year. So give context and understanding. Be a teacher. Be a teacher. And when teachers are giving a lesson, a history lesson, for instance, they're not just giving the year that something happened. They're giving you the full array of why it came to this, why this is important, why this was a turning point in history, but for your purpose in this ball game. It's not just about numbers. It's about the story. Be a storyteller. Be a teacher. Be an informer. Educate. It's part of being a play-by-play announcer, not just on radio, but on TV too. Educate. Make the listener / viewer understand what they're listening to or what they're watching. Simulcast. I promised you I would get to this. Traditionally, as I mentioned, simulcasts are slanted toward radio style. Why is that? Because a radio listener trying to listen to a television broadcast doesn't get the information traditionally that they need. Because on TV, you have pictures, and a TV announcer isn't giving every piece of information because for their audience, a lot of it is already up on screen. So generally during simulcast, it's called in a radio fashion because the radio listener needs vivid information, description, or else they're lost. And if the TV viewer happens to be given a lot of information that they don't necessarily need, so be it. They're getting overload, but so be it. Worst comes to worst, they turn the volume down, they still see the picture. But as I mentioned, the Northwoods League office, because they want to add more value to their property, they want to add more value to the Northwoods League webcast, and trying to make it more of a traditional TV style webcast, or asking you, the announcers, even if you're doing a simulcast, to try to do it more in a television style. It's going to be difficult. The balance will likely fall somewhere in between. This is something that I'm going to have to work with you guys on during the course of the season, because this is something that's not being asked of anywhere else that I know of. So there aren't a whole lot of scenarios that I can give you. There aren't a whole lot of examples that I can give you other than the experience as we go. But make sure that you're not completely cheating your radio listeners out of a broadcast. You're not going to be able to give the full description, the full picture, the full canvas of your painting, so to say, in these simulcasts anymore. But you also don't want to leave your radio listeners out in the cold, because then they don't have a reason to tune in. They're not getting anything. They're being starved of information. At the same token, your TV viewer, you don't want to confuse them by constantly mentioning things that aren't up on the monitor, constantly mentioning stories that have nothing to do with what's going on the monitor. It's going to be a balance that you're going to have to find. And we'll work on that during the course of the season. And I think as we get more examples of people doing things right, doing things wrong, I'll be able to relay that to you guys, You'll be able to see it, literally see it firsthand, and we'll be able to say, hey, this is a good example. This is not a good example. You need a little bit more TV here. You need a little bit more radio here. And we can work it out where there is more of a balance and more what the Northwoods League is looking for out of their webcast. But I'm telling you, it's going to be a challenge, but we'll be up to it. We're going to make it work. As I mentioned, at a minimum, keep the radio listeners informed of at least the fundamentals of what's happening out there. A reminder about controversial situations that are going to arise. Again, give the description, give the context, don't expose yourself. What do I mean by that? Don't allow yourself to be put in a situation by your commentary that you are accusing somebody of something, that you are trying to create a false controversy. Just give the description and the context. For instance, if somebody, as I mentioned earlier, hit somebody with a pitch, maybe you felt like it's revenge. Maybe you felt like it's a dirty play. Maybe you felt like he broke an unwritten rule of baseball. Maybe you felt like a lot of things. Nobody cares how you felt. Sorry. It goes the same for me. Nobody cares how I felt. Just give the description and context. And if it leads to a brawl on the field, explain why. Not because, he's a dirty player. No, explain why. Explain the history of why the batter reacted the way he did. Because this happened last inning or this happened last series. Just give the description and the context and let the rest play out. That's how you need to do it. Also, keep your speculations and keep your assumptions out of it. Don't try to speculate on why two guys are jawing at each other unless you really know. And don't make assumptions about really anything. Just state the facts. State the facts. If somebody's screaming at somebody, you don't know why. You don't have to say, I don't know why, but just say, hey, they're going at it out of nowhere. And it looks like, okay, everybody's coming in to break it up. Things are quieting down. And say, well, we'll try to get to the bottom of that. But don't start throwing out wild guesses and throwing, the proverbial crap up against the wall, because all you're doing is exposing yourself. You're leaving yourself out there to criticism because you're creating information out of nothing. It doesn't work. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Injuries. You're not a doctor. At least you probably aren't. If you are, tell me, and I will give you a special exemption. But you're probably not a doctor, and you should not be trying to figure out exactly what injury a player has. So limit it to what you see. He's holding his leg. He's holding his shoulder. He took an awkward slide. The trainer is checking out his fingers. Leave it to what you see. Don't go into, it looks like he has a broken whatever. Or, that looks like a sprained leg. You don't know. You don't know. And again, opening yourself up to criticism. You're not a doctor. Don't try to play one on TV. Just state what you see with your own eyes. If the guy has a history of an injury, okay, now you're adding context. He's come up lame running down to first base. We saw him earlier cramping up. Or, he's coming off of a ligament injury in his knee. You're not putting the two together. You're not saying one directly caused the other, but you're adding context. But again, you're not a doctor. Don't try to play one. By the way, have a plan to get information from the athletic trainer, meaning have an instant messaging application where you guys can communicate with each other during the course of the game. You can text him or her, hey, what were you checking out Jones for earlier? Or, why did Bob come off the field early? Maybe they can give you information. Maybe they can't. Maybe they'll be tight-lipped with information. Maybe they won't. But it's worth it. It's worth being able to take the 5 seconds during a commercial break to text and try to get that information. And again, just makes you look smarter on the air. And by the way, you're getting it from the source. The athletic trainer told us that the reason that Jones came out of the game in the 5th inning was you have direct information. You look like a journalist. You got to the source of the information and you gave the listener accurate information rather than just letting them guess. So have a system in place where you can get information in real time from the athletic trainer during the game. Breaks. Think of it as a TV show. What happens during a TV show when they go into break? They usually pick a moment that's sort of a cliffhanger moment that that leaves you wanting more. So when you go into a break, sometimes you'll only have a couple seconds because you're up against the clock. You hear the music playing in your ear. You've got to get out, and the most you can get out is 3-2 Bombers, top fifth coming up. It's going to happen sometimes. It's okay, but for the most part, try to get in a reset, an interesting reset. Bombers storming back with 3 here in the 5th. More coming up after this. Okay, now you've given a little bit more information. Now you've added a little bit of drama to it. You had to do it in 5 seconds or less, but it wasn't just inning and score. You gave a little bit of information. Close ball game here after 5, top of the order coming up. Okay, now we know that the other team has, their best hitters coming up. It's not much, but it's what you can do to give the listener or the viewer a reason to think that what's coming up might be a little bit exciting. It's all you can do in the limited amount of time that you have, but try to create that little bit of a cliffhanger, that little bit of a drama. That you only have a few seconds, but don't waste those few seconds that you have. Make sure you give the inning and score on both ends of the break, going into a break and coming out of a break, especially on radio. It's incredibly frustrating for a radio listener to have listened for a few minutes and you go to break and they know it's going to be a few more minutes until you come out and they haven't heard the score forever. Give them that information going into the break. It's the least you can do. And coming out of the break as well. Because coming out of the break, again, you have a new set of listeners. Give them the inning and score. Don't be cheap. Don't be selfish. Always. There should never be a break for the rest of your life. An inning break, an injury break, a pitching change break, where you don't give the inning and score on both ends, going in and coming out. Not one for the rest of your career. That's how important it is. There's no reason not to do it. Make sure, as George alluded to in his preseason video, that you have consistent out cues. Whether it's you're listening to Bomber Baseball on the Bomber Radio Network, or whether it's whatever it is, have a consistent out cue so your director knows when you're going to break, so your engineer back in the radio studio knows when you're going to break. It helps time everything out. It helps eliminate dead air. Make sure you work those out before the season start. Your timing needs to be accurate, guys, and this was covered in the preseason video with George as well. When you're doing that webcast and you hear the music in your ear, you should know exactly how long you have to get out. Get out. Get out before you get cut off. It's got to be timed out. There's no reason to drag it on. If you know you have 5 seconds, you have 5 seconds. That's it. Take 4 seconds, talk, and get out. You cannot feel like you have free reign to dictate the breaks. You don't. You don't have control over them. Somebody else does. And in the end, the sponsors do. The sponsors are paying for that time. Get out when you're supposed to get out. And again, reset. Reset going in, reset coming out. I talked as much about resets as I think I could. If anybody has any further questions about that, let me know. Studio communication, and this goes back to George's preseason video as well. Not only studio communication, but communication with your director. This is your lifeline. You are not alone, basically. You're working as a team, and you have to know you're working as a team. This all comes down to communication, and it starts long before airtime. Making sure, number one, that whoever's supposed to be producing your radio broadcast tonight knows that they're supposed to be producing your radio broadcast. Talk to them a few hours before the game. Remind them, hey, we're on the air at 6:45 tonight. Let them know about any special circumstances. Maybe there's rain in the forecast. Maybe the game is going to start late because there's some special presentation. Let them know. Sometimes there are time changes that you forget to tell the station about. it's going to stink if you try to call at 6:40 to set up the broadcast and nobody's on the other end of the line because they thought the game was an hour later. Make sure you're in touch a few hours before the game with your radio producer. For your television producer or your television director, whatever it's termed, you guys got work to do before the broadcast starts. You got a lot of work to do before the broadcast starts. You have to lay out what you want the broadcast to be that night. The areas of focus. What do we want to focus on tonight? What are the storylines? Who are the big players to watch for? Any special storylines that you want to touch on? Any graphics? Maybe there are special stats or special trends that you know about that you want to touch on before the game. Guess what? If you're mentioning it on the air, it's too late to create a graphic. So you need to let the director know that these are important things that I know, unless there's a dramatic change, that I know that I want to talk about. Let's get a graphic ready. And I want to talk about it maybe in the third inning, if at all possible. And they'll have it even more prepared. But this starts long before you get on the air. You guys have to set up a time with your director to talk about every reputable network quality broadcast. They have these pre-production meetings. Some of you guys may have gone through these. Hours before the broadcast, everybody meets in the truck. They go through all the scenarios. They go through all the camera angles. They go through. It's like a television show. It's like it's scripted. It's not scripted because you can't script a live sporting event, but as much as possible, they have storylines and they have elements. They're called elements, whether it's a pre-produced piece of video or whether it's elements. They have all this produced beforehand. Again, they might not use all of it, but they have it ready. Critically important that you guys are communicating beforehand and you have a plan for the broadcast. It's not your college radio station anymore for you young guys. You're moving up now. This is professional stuff. And they want it looking and sounding professional. This is how you do it. Know your signals. You probably will have a set of signals worked out with your director. I talked about that earlier. Know the backup plans as well. If there's rain, what are you going to do? You can't decide when it's raining. Oh, boy. Hey, Jim, do you have anything to play back in the studio? No, you got to work that out beforehand. They have to know that they're going to a 1-minute break. You'll bring it back. You'll do a reset. You'll send it to another 2-minute break. You'll bring it back. By that time, you should know maybe how much rain is in the forecast, when you might be able to play again. Okay? Now, there's a plan to either go back to regular programming, to play a pre-produced interview that you might have done, a long-form interview with, a legend of the team, something that you have stored away for a rainy day that you can play for 20 minutes. But these have to be planned in advance. They can't be done on the fly. Again, always assume someone can hear you. I talked about this earlier, but this goes back to studio communication. As much as you might think that your engineer back at the station is on top of his game and mutes you during commercial breaks, guess what? Even the best sometimes forget. Always assume while you're talking with your engineer during the break that somebody can hear you. Keep it professional. Keep the conversation professional. Keep it clean. And make sure that both of you are aware of any potential problem. You might be broadcasting from a ballpark that has a spotty phone line. You might be broadcasting from a ballpark in which the electricity went out yesterday and they had an electrical issue. These are things you need to be aware of. And you need to make the people that you work with aware of them so that they can come up with a potential solution. So maybe if your connection goes out, they have your cell phone number readily available. They can call you on your cell phone in 20 seconds or less, and you can do the broadcast on your cell phone until you're able to restore your mechanized connection on your hotline or your Comrex machine or whatever you have. But they have to be aware of those things so that, again, you have a plan. Planning is so critical. Okay? Does anybody have any questions? Anybody with any questions at all? Okay, we've made it through hour 2. I promise you there's not that much more to go. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to come back at 24 minutes after the hour. It's 24 minutes after the hour. Come on back. We're going to finish things up. We'll finish up with a presentation, which is only a couple minutes left, and then we'll do a question and answer session, which hopefully will be fruitful for you, and that'll be it for the broadcasts. But come on back at 24 minutes after the hour, and I'll talk to you then. All right, everybody, welcome back. Before we get going here on the final part of the presentation tonight, I just want to know if at this point you have any questions, any concerns, anything you want me to address before the question and answer session begins in a few minutes. Anything before that we've already touched on that you want to talk about? Okay, so let's finish up with the regular presentation here. Load it back up. This is only a couple more minutes. Post game. Reminder about post game focus. When the final out comes, you're not done. The game's not over. You need to keep your focus. Make sure you're producing a good, solid post game show. That it doesn't sound like you're in a race to get out the door first. Recap, recap, recap. This is the opportunity to fill in all those blanks that you couldn't fill in during your normal in-game resets. So recap as much as possible. Make pretend like the person who was listening to your post-game show only caught the final out of the game. That was it. You need to catch them up on the other 8+ innings of baseball. Try to recap as much as you can, not at bat by at bat, but the big stuff, the big moments of the game, the big stars of the game. Put things in context. What does it all mean? What does it all mean for the team? Where does it put them at in the standings? Where does it put them at trend-wise? Where does it put individual players at? What does it mean? Put it all in context. It's not just the final score that matters. It's what that final score actually indicates. Don't let the post-game show drag on, though. On the road, you're going to want to get out of there because you just want to get something to eat and get back to the hotel. But at home as well, there's only so much you can talk about in a Northwoods League baseball game. So, try to keep it within 10 minutes, 12 minutes with commercials, but don't let it keep dragging on, and you don't need to recap it for the 15th time. You don't need to plug the next game for the 12th time. Keep it within reason. Post-game interviews, complete your introduction and give it context. What do I mean by that? When you're introducing your post-game interview guest, don't just call them out by their first name. You need their position, their complete name, and what they did that night. Why are you interviewing them? Because they had a big home run, or because they're now the league leader in strikeouts, or whatever it is. But back here with the post game show, 5-3 win for for Green Bay tonight, and we're here with Sam. Sam, big game. What? No, we need more than that. And by the way, I've heard that. I've heard that before. Be professional. People need to know who they're listening to and why they're listening to them. It should not sound like an interrogation. Have a conversation, just a back and forth, light questions, follow-up questions. Listen to what they're saying. Maybe ask a follow-up question, and be done with it after 3 or 4 questions. That's all you really need to drag it out for. Understand who you're dealing with. Some players love to talk. Love to talk about themselves, but love to talk about baseball as well. Other players, it's like pulling their teeth. It's a root canal. They don't want to be up there. It's the last place they want to be. They're not comfortable in front of a microphone. Understand beforehand who you're dealing with and adjust your questions and the tone of your interview accordingly. And make sure at the end of the broadcast, you give a proper sign-off. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Big night for, I hate to keep coming back to Battle Creek, but that was my first time in the Northwoods League. Big night tonight for the Bombers. 5-2 win over Green Bay puts Battle Creek within striking distance of first place. They'll have an opportunity to get there tomorrow night, 7:05 start, live here from C.O. Brown Stadium, wherever they're playing nowadays. We'll talk to you on the pregame show at 6:45 tomorrow night. Thanks for joining us. You've given a proper sign-off. Recap of the game, why it mattered, what to tune in for tomorrow night. Proper sign-off. One last thing, marketing for the team. Guys, you're not only the broadcaster, you're part of the marketing wing of the team. This is what a broadcast is. It's marketing. It's trying to get people into the stadium, paying for tickets, getting sponsors on board. This is part of your job. So do your job. Sell the experience. It's not just about the ball game. It's about the silly promotions that are going on when you come back from break. It's about the smell of the food in the air. It's about the kids having enjoyment in the seats. You can talk about that a little bit as well. Sell the experience of going to the ballpark. This is why you fell in love with baseball to begin with, because you love being there. Don't forget why you're there. Don't forget what makes it so special. Sell that experience to the listener. If you have promotional material you need to work it in liberally. Don't try to cram it all in the third inning, but sprinkle it in throughout the game, whether it's sponsor reads that you need to do, whether it's team promotional stuff you need to do. Work it in. Part of your job. Don't be cheap with it. Think about and talk about any kind of community work the team is doing or any individual players are doing. Fans love to hear about that stuff. Get to know the city you're in. Don't just spend your entire day at the ballpark. Don't spend your entire day at your host family's house. Get to know the city a little bit. It's all part of marketing. And make sure, again, I talked about this before. Bob Costas walking down the street is still Bob Costas. Every time you step out the door, you're marketing. You don't know it sometimes, but you are. So make sure you keep that in mind. You're a representative of the team wherever you go. If you're comfortable, try to talk about the team a little bit. Try to let people know it's a good experience. They'll see you maybe with your team branded shirt on. They'll want to talk about baseball. Let them know they need to come out and see a ball game. It's all part of your job, even though it might not say it on your employment contract. It is. It's part of your job. Make sure you're doing good things for the team, even when you're not specifically on duty. That is it for what I have to say. Now I want to know what you guys have to say and what you're interested in talking about, if anything. So I will open up the floor. Jordan said for whatever reason you're having a hard time hearing what other people are saying, but you can hear me fine. So for the Q&A, quick recap to answer the question before. No problem, Jordan. I'll be sure to do that. No problem at all. I'm opening up the floor here, guys. Is there anything at all you want to talk about? Any scenarios you want to talk about? Anything for the new guys that you want to learn about the league before you actually get started? I know it's been a long session, but floor is open, guys.
Yeah, Steven here.
Yep.
So when thinking about, you kind of mentioned a few different entities that we sort of answer to between the league and obviously the team that we work for, et cetera. Like, who would you say that we should, like, in any kind of controversial situation or something comes up, like, who would you suggest we stay like the most devoted to, I guess, for lack of a better way to put that?
It's a good question. Jordan, Steve was asking about who do you answer to, basically? Is it the league or the team you work for in controversial situations? You work for the team, but the league oversees the team. So your first loyalty comes to the folks that are paying your bill. The Northwoods League is paying my bill, but I'm just being honest with you. This you have to deal with your general manager first. Controversial situations, if you're being the professional that you should, you're removed from that anyway. You've simply stated the facts. You haven't gotten in the middle of it. You haven't expressed your opinion. You haven't criticized anybody. So controversial situations, you're simply stating facts. And if the facts come out in favor of your team, great. If they don't, they don't. That's the way it works sometimes. But try to take yourself personally out of the situation. If it comes down to it, where there's a conflict between the team and the league, let your general manager handle it. That's what they're there for. They're in constant touch with the league. They're in constant touch with the league officials. They know how to handle delicate situations. You broadcast. If for some reason the league is in contact with you about something, you don't know how to handle it, or you're afraid that you're going to make matters worse, call your general manager, tell them, hey, I need you to handle this. I don't know how to go about this. However, keep in mind, if you put yourself in a situation you shouldn't have put yourself in, you're going to answer to the league. For you new guys, the league will fine you. If you criticize an umpire in a harsh way, they'll fine you. They're not going to even warn you. They'll fine you. If you do something you shouldn't have done off the air and it makes the newspaper, the team might fire you, but the league definitely is going to get after you about what happened. It's going to happen. So you do have multiple bosses you need to answer to. If you're just talking about the broadcast itself and how you should handle sequencing, how you should handle the pregame show, how you should handle the webcast in terms of TV versus radio style, that's a different matter. But if you're simply asking about controversial situations, A, take yourself out of them to begin with. B, answer to the team first. And if there's a conflict, let the team handle it with the league. That's the best advice I can offer. I hope that helps. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? All right, guys, here's the deal. I will be working with you a couple of times throughout the season. After the first week of regular season play, I will be reviewing everybody's work. I'll take about 10 to 15 minutes of a random broadcast that you've done and break it down. I'm going to make my own personal notes, and I'm going to get with you through a phone conversation, and we're going to break down as much as possible your strengths, your weaknesses. We'll go over what we've done in the webinar tonight and compare it to what you're doing on the air, and we're going to make you better. This is my job. I'm pretty good at it, and we're going to make you better. We're going to make you better from the first week to the second week, and we're going to keep working on it throughout the course of the year. Also, right after the All-Star break, I'm going to do it again. I'll review another piece of your work. We'll compare it to where you were at the beginning of the season. We're going to polish you up, and we are going to make the difference between Game 1 and Game 72, hopefully massive, especially for you guys that are just entering the league. The Northwoods League has a history of putting guys in professional baseball, announcers. The Northwoods League has an announcer right now that I work with, Jared Sandler, who's working for the Texas Rangers. He's a play-by-play guy for the Rangers. Pretty big. He went from the Northwoods League to the big leagues. It's not just for the players. It's for the announcers, too. It can happen. But you need to improve quickly, get better quickly, because the time you have in this league is slim, and the competition at the next level is intense. So I will work with you as best I can. Work with me as best you can as well. Take what I'm saying to heart. Ask questions. I'm a little bit disturbed tonight that we didn't get more questions. Ask questions, not just when I'm reviewing your work. Ask them throughout the year. I'm here for you. I'm here to answer any phone calls, text messages, emails you have, any given situation that you weren't sure how to handle, anything comes up business-wise, maybe you have another offer from another league, anything about the business, about play-by-play specifically, whatever it is. I am your point of guidance that the league has brought on. Use me as a resource. Whatever you're going through, I guarantee you I've been there. Let me know, and I will give you the best advice and the best guidance possible. So that's it for now, and I'm here for you throughout the season, and I'll definitely be in touch with each of you after the first week to set up a time to speak with you personally. I wish you the best of luck. Can't wait to work with you this season, and we'll get going here soon. Best of luck with the start of the year, and have a great night, guys. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me today. Take care.
Thanks, Mike.